Hello, 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 beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of the USL Show. It is great to be back. And we have a special episode. We did it last year and 2 years ago. This has kind of become our annual USL Roundtable. And in order to get the true view of the USL, you're going to hear as little of me as you possibly can because no one wants to hear any more of me than you already do. So because of that, we brought in some special guests. But before we get into that, we have put into our live chat, and it will be in the description of our podcast players and on the YouTube thing later, where we have a Google form that we want you to fill out. It legit takes 5 to 10 minutes where we want to hear your thoughts on making the USL show a better show in general. So we're going to talk about I just want to address all those kind of things and just to make it a better product for you. And for the people who we definitely want to make it a better product for, Madcat Peel, Timothy Meadows, Andrew Towsley, Al of the Hedgehog, Kunal Patel, MOS, NF Reg 30, Tim Knox, Rion Lacara, Stephen Howard, Jeremy Churchman, Alberto Aguilar, Noah Telford, Michael Fuchs, Joshua Duder, John Fuller, Christopher Cohn, Aaron J., Frank Anthony, John Hunt, and Harry Austin. Thank you so much for supporting us. It has been an awesome year with you guys, and we appreciate all your love and support. But some people who do need some love and support are people who are joining us tonight. So we are going to change kind of production view, and I am going to bring in our first guest of the night, and he will introduce himself and all the things that he covers. World famous Yogi. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I think this is my first time on this show.
I think so. I think last time we had Kyle on, but yeah, I think it's your first time on this one.
Oh, okay. We did one black rapper per quota. I love it. No, I'm joking. I'm giving you a hard time. No, like you said, my name is Yogi. I cover the Richmond Kickers, the Richmond Ivy, USL League One with Walking 90, and yeah, that's about it as far as league stuff that I do.
Perfect. And we are going to go out to the West Coast. We are going to talk to @Pal on the Sky, Mr. Brad. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I've been supporting this league since 2017, I believe. Used to do a podcast out in Reno, 1868 Weekly, following 1868. After they folded, I came down and supported Orange County with a lot of the players who jumped ship down there as well. And I've been with Orange County since 2021 when they won the championship and following the league ever so closely, the whole time.
Well, we are going to go ahead and go out to sort of the middle. Where is Kentucky really? It's not really the South, but it's also not the Midwest. I don't know what Kentucky is. We're going to talk to old Lexington Luther himself, Tyler Crane.
We're whatever you want it to be, man. It really depends on who you ask and where you're at in the state. Glad to be back. It's been a minute, but of course, I do all the content for Lexington Sporting Club, W League, Super League, the Academy, UPSL, of course, now Championship, because we're joining the fray in that level. So excited to be here.
And last but not least, the new kid on the block who thinks that the league is easy because he goes to the final for the first time he's around. Matt.
So definitely don't think it's easy, especially since we didn't come away with any hardware. But I appreciate you saving me for last. I also appreciate that in this setup that you have on the screen here, you've put yourself as like the center square if this was Hollywood Squares. So yeah. I appreciate that setup. But yes, my name is Matt. I do a weekly podcast on Thursdays covering Rhode Island FC with my co-host Jason. And it's truly an honor to be on the show and get to give you guys all of my hottest takes and worst assumptions about this league and just quite the ride it's been in year one for this club.
Well, in terms of kind of who has been around the longest and covering the most, I mean, it's kind of hard to look past Yogi. I mean, you've been around doing this for a long time, doing all the different things.
Yeah.
I mean, River City, has been around for as long as I can remember. Plus, Walking 90 is great stuff. So you've been around the block.
Yeah, I have that.
We're going to start with the things that everybody loves to do, which is get your hot takes off. And when we're talking about things that the league did not do well, right? We're talking about league wide, and maybe it's just your club. Maybe this is an Ivy and Kickers thing only, but this could be league wide. And for people who are in the live chat, please be more than welcome to drop some stuff into the chat that you are thinking of as well, and we can discuss it because we want it to be a complete roundtable, including the people listening. Yogi, we're going to start with you. Just
Okay.
kind of league wide, what are some things that you're just like, man, that was just not up to the standard that we should be at?
I think it's the folding of multiple clubs. I mean, you never want to see clubs go away because those are communities that are destroyed or disenfranchised from believing in water soccer. Like, no matter how much we want to believe that we are this super mega power, soccer is still very young in this sport. Like, we're still very much in the infancy stage of where soccer could be, and we're losing communities and whatnot. And I think there was a lot of confusion about why these clubs folded. I think a lot of people thought they were league, like the league was just like, oh, we're closing these clubs. Where in actuality, it was piss poor owners. In the case of NoCo and Fuego and whatnot, the Memphis situation, I know it was a stadium. I do want to give the league some credit though, where they have put barriers in place of better venting owners, but that was pretty disappointing to see those clubs fold because, I mean, NoCo, you talk about one of the arguably probably one of the top 5 teams in USL League One history, and to see the way how they kind of just closed up shop was sad. You know, Fuego had their issues from day one. We've also lost Lansing Ignite, who was another exciting team in 2019. So, and FC Tucson, they didn't necessarily fold, but he went down a division just because of stadium situation. So yeah, I'm hoping in the future, like if we look at the next 5 years, that we have better owners that are stable and are willing to kind of ride it out, not just automatically like as soon as they see a downturn, they're like, all right, cool, packing up shop, because it has a bigger impact on those communities than just like, you know, close it up like a deli or something.
For sure. I mean, I think one thing, and I think you're right to give credit to the USL kind of over NoCo and Fuego. They were not upholding professional standards in the slightest. I mean, we talked about NoCo a ton. Fuego, I mean, listen, Jermaine Jones is going to come out with a podcast any day now, just kind of releasing everything. Apparently,
we don't need that. No, nobody needs that. Nobody needs that.
Can I just jump on the fact real fast that, you know, the mention of closing a deli down, I still am looking for a Richmond Kickers Arby's 1995 jersey. So if you've got the meats, Yogi, if you know of a way, let's talk shop because I need it in my life. I'm just throwing it out there.
Everyone is looking for that kit. Is that kit in the Target, the 2 targets on the shorts kit? Everyone's looking for those 2 things. If I find it, I'm not letting no one know.
You threw deli meats out there. I was thinking Richmond Kickers, and I was like, well, I can't not say this now.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm going to go ahead go to the person below Yogi, to the person that, by the way, Andy accidentally called you bread in DMs. Just autocorrect happened. Just called you bread. And I was like, all right. Brad, what about you? What's some league-wide stuff that you're just like, man, like how can we improve this? This is just not it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to first give a shout out to the league. We've seen, I think, 1 USL championship team fold this year. You know, the other stuff withstanding with USL League One and the unfortunate situation behind Norco and Fuego. However, I think it's just Memphis so far. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but the fact of the matter is, I think early on in the season we were talking about 3, maybe 4 teams were rumored to close shop up this season, and the fact that we've only had 1 really is a, you know, as of right now, you know, December 17th. It's really a kind of a silver lining that, you know, hopefully the league's starting to stabilize a little bit. Some of those teams that I thought were kind of truly goners have announced new ownership, announced other plans, you know, not necessarily going under. Hopefully we see teams like the Energy come back from Oklahoma City. in the near future as well. So I'll give the credit to where credit's due there. The one thing that I wish would be implemented better, this is kind of a futures thing if we're allowed to talk about that right now, is the Jägermeister Cup next year. I really think right now I love the idea of interleague play, USL 1 versus USL Championship. However, I think it could have been implemented a lot better. I'm sure, as Yogi has mentioned, the teams folding in USL League One and Memphis have kind of changed plans on that, going from 41 teams down to 38. But the fact of the matter is, it's six divisions, and we have 8 teams advancing out of that. I really wish we could have seen a 8-team, or 8 conferences, 8 divisions, and the winners of each of those coming out. With 24 teams in USL Championship, you can split it up 3 teams in each division, and then split up the USL League One teams as they fall. I'm sure, behind the scenes they're laughing at me, like, try to make that work with how the teams are geographically. And I would go back with you and say, how do we make the USL Championship work every year when Memphis is a West Coast team? It's never going to work. So we might as well, bite the bullet there.
I would just say to that, like, I don't disagree that there's a lot of probably fine tuning that needs to happen. And, last year's Jägermeister Cup was a lesson to be learned for the league. This is that next step. I think the bigger question really isn't how this shakes out, but can the 2 leagues intertwine? Because this is probably a step towards, that pro-rel conversation, which I'm sure someone's going to talk about by the end of the episode.
Reset the counter.
But
start it over.
But having said that, in all honesty, like, I think this is much more about the commingling of those 2 spaces to see, is there an appetite, is there a desire for championship teams and their fans and communities to see, USL 1 play, right? Like, the Open Cup isn't really a good pressure test of that. So I think that specifically to the regional lock to this, like, we in Rhode Island are super excited and hoping we get to see Hearts of Pine in a game next season. Like, we were already thinking Open Cup, like, could we have that? And now we get kind of a second draw from the well, if you so to speak. But the one thing I will say, to your point, I don't love the size of the format, because not only is it the amount of people that advance, but I don't like the idea that we have 5 teams in Group 4, and one of those teams we won't even see. So it's like, I don't care about the competition part, like who gets to play the 2 USL 1 teams and which team is stuck playing the championship side. It's the fact that, like, from a parity perspective, which I've loved with the USL so far, there's a team that's going to miss out on this. So, like, how do you say there's a true winner from your group when you're not all playing each other at the same time?
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's kind of is the weird, funky thing about having those big groups where you play randomly 4 teams. I don't know. Is there any way how you could really format it in a way that you can play everyone without having like a lopsided group? I don't know.
Well,
that's why I'm not a math teacher.
Yeah, the way that I would propose to have such a division, since we are, I'll make it make sense for 40 teams instead of 38. If you split it up, each team gets five, or each group gets 5 teams. And we've already established that they're going to have 4 games split, 2 home, 2 away at random drawing in the current format. So just keep it the same. You're playing each team in your split once. Sure, you might get, the luck of the draw. The 2 home games are the ones you really want. The 2 away games are the ones you really want. But, if we're not going to have the Open Cup in its true glory with all MLS teams, this is going to be the next best thing. And I love having this. I think it can be fine-tuned for the future.
Now, this is a question for Yogi and Tyler, because y'all are in the weeds of Jägermeister. I followed it, but I was doing my best. There were cross-division competition, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, with your lopsided groups or the ones that are not lopsided, you could say someone from, I don't remember what the group numbers are. So if I'm totally off here, just whatever. But, you'll have one team, everybody from group 3 will play somebody from group 4, a home and away. Somebody from group 5 will play somebody from group 6, and it will just kind of be make it one big thing in that way. And you could say it's not really fair because, the bad team got the other bad team, and now that they're in because they got to play the bad team. But this is already a random draw anyway, and you could always have that conversation anyway. I feel like that's the way you could have evened it out just a little bit more. But the current conversation, I think it was the switchbacks. Someone correct me, excuse me if I'm wrong, but they kind of put out there that it's 30 league games already. They're taking it 30 league games for the championship. And so there's 4 matches that are missing, and those are presumably Jägermeister matches. I think that's probably how that would work. I would just say that if you want to fix it to be more even divisions, you could always just go cross division like they did last year for Jägermeister anyway.
Yeah, you could do that. I think last year there wasn't so much groups. It was more so regions. So the real reason why they made the Jägermeister Cup, Tyler can allude to this as well, is just because like League One is a lot smarter than the championship. So it's a lot harder to like travel cross country, right? So they cut down on that with doing like more regional based stuff. And in that, they wanted kind of like they were trying to promote like regional rivalries. So for instance, like Lexington, I think y'all was in a group with like y'all, Madison, Union Omaha,
Knox.
Yeah,
and then even like our outer region opponents, we even got Greenville, which we kind of were like building a little bit of history with. So that was kind of nice.
And same for us. Like we were in a group, it was us, Charlotte, I can't remember who else, but like our cross regional rivals was Chattanooga, right? I mean, my fault. Our cross regional rivals was Spokane, who there's kind of like a little beef there. But yeah, I think that was kind of the idea behind it. I get why you're doing it in the seed because now you're seeing matchups that you normally wouldn't see in the cup. Like Paul said, like you wouldn't necessarily see these matchups unless you got in the US Open Cup. Like I can only speak for us. So like for us, like the opportunity of having like a North Carolina FC come up here, or Louisville, or a Loudoun, like I could go back and show you the Open Cup game from the Loudoun matchup last year. And just imagine that atmosphere now where like it's points on the line, And then I will say it's better in a sense, and Tyler, I'm pretty sure you agree with me as well. It got very confusing last year with the amount of Jägermeister games that you forgot, like, is this Jägermeister or is this a league game? Until it hit 90 minutes, you're like, okay, we're not playing PKs. All right, cool. This is a regular season game. Like you will forget sometimes in the midst of it. Even like the players and coaches would admit it, like they forgot. So much so that NoCo at one point actually walked off the field when they had to come back on for PKs, which is hilarious.
Yeah. Forgot about that.
Yeah. But so like I think with the game shortened, I think that helps out as well, kind of put a little bit more emphasis on it. But I think what they're trying to mimic is like what the Champions League is going for with that whole Swiss model system, which is still kind of news, kind of weird still, but we'll see how it is.
Yeah, but like I would argue real fast that that many games doesn't necessarily build better rivalries. I've heard often that the New York teams and MLS and the LA teams, they don't like seeing each other 3 or 4 times because they don't have an even schedule.
No.
As much as I want to see Hartford an additional time, I don't want to see Hartford away. And I don't like the idea of giving up like the entire California state when it comes, because that's the sacrifice, right? Like we haven't talked about that for the championship side. Jägermeister Cup sacrifices 4 teams in your interconference. If the Colorado spring switchbacks post is to be believed, I don't want to not play Orange County Soccer Club and not get my revenge from that loss last season when they come to Tidewater. So like that's difficult for me to swallow.
I'll talk about what things I did like because Jaeger was something I liked from last year. But we'll get to Tyler in just a minute. I do think that speaking of playing people that many times a year, if you were around in 2020 and you were around in the groups where you played the same 4 teams 4 times, first off, those rivalries got fun because those players hated each other because they just saw them last week. Like, like they were just sick and tired of each other, but like fans were sick of it. I mean, what I would do now to be able to play Memphis again, but I had to watch my team play Memphis 4 times in 1 year, and it sucked. Getting those teams that many times was brutal. Tyler, we need to hear what's something that you feel like the league just across the board can really just improve on.
Man, a little bit of mine was gone with like the Jaeger Cup. I know we like beat that to death. I have another one too, but I will also say, just to kind of piggyback before I move on to my other, I really thought that it was a bummer to see how little like general fans, like not diehard fans, but just general fans, had no clue that the Jaeger Cup was even going on, or what it was, what it meant, what the format was. Like, I'd be at games and then we'd go into PKs and they'd make the announcement, and every fan, except for like the hardcore ones that like I know of, would just be like, what's happening? Like, what's going on right now? And so I think that, you know, I mean, the league put out a lot of information for sure, but it just seemed like there's just like a lack of information from a general fan base. Like, we're just going to a game every once in a while type of fans. So I think it'd be cool. And this, I think, might be a little bit of the solution, having championship versus League One, because then you have bigger storylines, right? You're like, hey, here's this whole, like, who's better, who's going to come out on top with this. So that might help solve a little bit of that. That's just an observation I had, you know, because I would have several people talk to me and be like, what is this? Like, why is this different? So that's just a little piece of it. But my other one too, and, you know, I don't know, take this for what you will. I do kind of feel like, and this isn't necessarily just tied to this year, I really wish the league, once a team or a prospective team that's coming makes an announcement, makes their social media presence known, and is like, we're coming, here we are. I wish the league would put a little bit more pressure on them to stay active consistently. And I know there's not a lot they can do, right? Because they don't have players, they don't have coaches. They can't necessarily be like, here's some information about our new coach, or here's like a player profile. But I feel like when they make these big grand reveals and then we go a year with radio silence, that's just hurting the potential build of that club. The hype is lessening, especially in those communities. You got to think, like, people in those communities aren't really like keeping that at the forefront of their mind. It's just something they heard about a while back, and then it kind of becomes like a rumor. I mean, Santa Barbara is a perfect example. They were all but dead forever, and then all of a sudden they were very much alive. And so,
Ponzi scheme FC, baby.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I just wish there was a little bit more of like a push to be like, hey, if we're gonna do this announcement and you're gonna go live and you're gonna say, here we are, you got to stay here. You got to be active in some type of way, and we can help you with that type of content. We can help keep your brand and your name flowing amongst people that are talking. But I don't know. I'd like to see a little bit more of that.
I feel like Jacksonville, they have like their own like Jacksonville podcast that their owners and like GM does. And not many people outside of Jacksonville listen to it, obviously, but at least they're active and alive, which now whenever they're joining, however they're joining, it's always a question, but at least they're posting stuff. I mean, Santa Barbara only told us to tell us they're alive after Memphis said that they were dead. Like it was a soul for a soul kind of situation. It was like, this is weird.
Reanimated corpse out of nowhere.
But yeah, for sure. Any final thoughts on anything anybody else said before we move on to the next segment?
You know, the only thing, since you didn't ask me, Kaylor, and I'm only slightly offended, but that's okay. I get it. I'm the rookie on the block. I got to earn my way. But I would say,
I'm sorry, my bad. That's on me.
It's all good, man. It's all good. I would say the only thing that kind of irked me in year one is that every piece of soccer knowledge I got about the USL had to come primarily through this show. And I'm so glad that you and John were here to be our tutors, our teachers. And I know you're a teacher, so I hope you enjoy the pun. But like the fact that there's no transparency about the mechanics of this league, it irks me to a certain extent that the USL doesn't have a higher definition of what they would consider their operational performance. And I'm not looking for contract lengths. I'm not looking for salary dispositions. I'm just looking for like the rules of the game. And I had to like crawl through barbed wire into a foxhole to get someone to confirm something. To go back for Rhode Island FC specifically, Coach Cano Smith had appealed a red card after a San Antonio FC situation against Golden Playmaker Noah Fuson. And there was this like squabble back and forth, like it's the league's fault, it's pro's fault. And the league was like, nope, it's the club's fault. And we were all sitting here like, well, what happened? And to the casual fan, that doesn't matter, right? But to the diehards, the soccer sickos who are here right now listening to us, like that's the kind of stuff they want to know. And so it's kind of like the problem with the league, but also what I would change if there was a little bit more transparency around the operational guidelines for this. Like coach interviews after game, whether there's a press reporter there or not, but just like giving that on their general performance and feelings and impressions of the game, making it available to ask a referee a question. We're never going to get VAR, right? So like, but we should be able to ask the refs like they do in every other competition and every other league that pro is assigned to. We should be able to get access to these pieces of information. So that was a bit kind of off-putting at the beginning, where like I'd ask a question and then it'd be 5 weeks and they're like, yeah, we're not going to give that to you. So I would challenge that and then work on that so that when these moments happen, we don't become a joke. We're always held at the highest level of professionalism, so that the 5 of us in this room aren't the experts. We're just part of the narrative, and there's always a league professional that can help disseminate that information.
I will say on that front, Nicholas Murray does a great job in doing what he can. Like Nicholas does a great job in sharing what he is allowed to share. So like if people aren't reading the Nicholas Murray stuff and the all access with Devin and Mike and the super show for the Super League, it is so good, and they drop a lot of nuggets in there. And I wish they would promote more of it. And I'm not a person who does like the shorts and like the TikToks and all that kind of stuff. I'm really bad about putting our stuff out there because I don't consume that content. So my brain's like, no one does, but people do. And if you put some of the clips out from those shows on social media, I think people would see just how good that is and just how much good content there is. Yes. You kind of mentioned the teacher thing. I was going to mention at the top of the show, I think it is funny that there are 3 of us on here do just teach full time. So like, which by the way, Yogi, are you still at school?
No, I'm in my office. It's just that me and my wife are both teachers, so it looks like in school. Yeah.
Okay. I was like, dude, you got to get out of there.
No. Oh, trust me. No. But real quick, I just want to say to Matt's point, he's absolutely right. And I think the league itself does itself disservice. And I think Nick does an amazing job. Me and him had a good conversation. I think he'd be cool with me sharing this. But like the biggest issue they're having is that, like with CBS, right? I think I will be fair that I've called out CBS for sometimes their abhorrent lack of coverage on the league stuff. And I think he was just explaining to me like the reason why you don't see a lot of stuff promoted, like on CBS Colosso, right? The morning footage show, is because it's about like who engages with it. Like Nick can put out an article, but it won't get a lot of clicks. But if you put out something for MLS, it gets a bunch of clicks, right? So I would tell people like if you really love lower league soccer, if you really love like USL stuff like that, like engage with this stuff, promote it, read it, share with others, because that way like it shows to his higher ups. And don't get me wrong, like I think this whole methodology is stupid because I think like if you do good and people are going to get to it, but that's a whole different story for a different day. Like share it with people and get them involved with it as well. That's all I want to say. But Matt, like he made an amazing point. I just wanted to put that too.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the things that we do like. And just because I skipped over you, now I feel bad. Matt, I just want to know what you did enjoy from this season.
Hey, USL Cup final. That's pretty great. Hadn't had one of those before. So,
okay.
But I will say that first and foremost, like the community, we kind of did our homework in year 0, and we're studying like who are going to be the perennial powerhouses, what communities were the going to be the heels of the league. And really honestly, for the people that traveled to our Bryant Stadium or to the places we traveled, especially in the playoffs, a lot of the fans were at every single one of those playoff games. This community is the real deal. I've been to a lot of the MLS stadiums, and you can tell there's a lot of people that are just there looking for a product, an entertainment product, not necessarily a soccer product. And that's not the case. Like to the point that was just made about, like these are communities that grow from nothing, like these secondary, tertiary markets. It's the real deal when you see these people get behind it. So that was a really fresh breath to just kind of consume in the year. And then I'd say the other part was just really like understanding and appreciating the parity that this league offers. I remember at the beginning of the season, Monterey Bay was leading the league or in the top 3, and we were almost dead last in our side of it. And then, stretch that out 6 months and the tables are basically completely flipped. I think that speaks to a lot of, I know Lou City ran away with the Shield, but like that is a fun thing in a place where unfortunately some leagues across multiple sports, they're built to have these like win now teams. And like I know a couple of you guys, when you did your preview of the season, some of you actually were talking high about the switchbacks, but like I don't think a lot of people really thought it was going to be the switchbacks to have it. And I know a lot of people didn't think Rhode Island was going to be in that final. So there's a lot of excitement to that. I look back to last season when we first got our hooks into this, and it was like Phoenix making the run that they made. And like I really enjoy that you can't predict the script when it comes to the USL Championship right now.
Yeah, I mean it's good. I mean, you have your perennial powerhouses, but there's a reason why playoffs are the king in the US. There's a reason why the playoffs are the playoffs, and it's because you just can never predict them. They are just something else, and it's a great time. And I do think that the league has done a great job with the playoff system and general parity. And I think people who've been around for a while, who were around for MLS2 teams were around. And I don't mean just 2016 Baby Bulls, running over everybody. The bad MLS2 teams, man, the parity is so much better now than it used to be. Like there is no give me game. I mean, you look at some of the worst teams in the league, like Miami gave a fight on days and you're like, whoa, this wouldn't have happened with other teams in the past. Or, you look at Fuego from down in League One, or sorry Tyler, even kind of Lexington a little bit, where you look at the bottom of the table and it's nothing like what you got out of Inter Miami 2, right? Like it was Inter Miami 2 was disgracefully bad, and those teams were just more competitive. And I think that with the exclusion of MLS2 teams, especially, this league's parity is incredible with no salary cap. MLS has a salary cap allegedly to keep the competition. USL doesn't have that. They have a floor because they have to pay a minimum. Shout out to the CBA, but there's no cap. You can pay people as much as you want, and it's been great. I think that is something that's awesome for not just the league but the players too. Let's go over to my top left corner, Yogi. Some from the year that you liked.
So I'll speak from the heart. I really like the fact that Richmond decided to go back and get into the women's game with the Richmond Ivy here. It's just really cool to see that in a community such as Richmond, that is, we have the oldest professional soccer team. I love putting it out there because Charleston loves to lie. Yeah, it's just amazing to see, and to see the amount of talent that we were pulling to, because we pulled in girls from like UVA, Maryland, Simmons from Florida State, who was on the Jamaican women's national team as well, played for us this year. And it's just great to see and the whole growth in it. Like, it was kind of refreshing as well, because we had to learn a whole new league, because this was pre-professional, right? Mm-hmm. And I would say the intensity of it was so much different than like what you're used to in League One. Like how, like, games in the men's side can be kind of boring and drawn out because you have so many games coming up. Whereas like women's game, it's like, no, you got 10 games, and after game 6, like your season's gonna be done. So every game, like they was putting it out there on the line, man, and it was just really cool covering that and seeing the engagement there, seeing how the crowd changed. Because I remember Eb, she's a NCFC fan and a Curtis fan. She was telling me like how the crowd dynamic is very different between the two. And I didn't, I've never seen it before, but seeing it in Richmond, like, it's very different. Like, you have people that are just Ivy fans, and you have people that are just Kickers fans, and then you have the sickos that are a mix of both. Yeah. And I would say the other thing that I really appreciated was the fact that Richmond, even though our season didn't go the way how we wanted it to start off with, we really used and developed our academy. And the goal, long-term goal, everyone will tell you is like, hey, like we want to sell guys overseas to Europe. That's everyone's long-term goal. But I think the thing that's really helping some of these clubs be more stable is they have functional and actively using their academies and not just using them to profit from. Like they're bringing players through so that way they can save a little bit more money on the bottom part of the roster for guys who, let's be honest, guys, a 23-year-old at the bottom of a championship roster ain't seeing the field. Where like an 18-year-old does a little bit more promise. So that's the thing I really love. And I think that's something we're starting to see across the league, definitely here in League One, where more teams, definitely Chattanooga and Tormenta, are going to lean a little bit more into their academies and using those guys instead of paying top dollar for bottom tier talent.
On the W League side, because I want to jump in on that, especially, I think the W League is one of the biggest wins that the USL has had in a long time.
Oh yeah.
Just in general, I mean, the Ivy attendance was awesome. The Oakland Soul attendance was awesome. Minnesota Aurora always does a great job. River Light was great. I mean, there were a lot of great attendances and great showings. And Tyler, maybe you can speak on this a little bit better. The difference between W League and Super League in terms of top of the line talent is not that far off. It's just not that far off. And people see semi-pro and say, oh, they're not that good, or, they'll be good one day. Yo, they're good now.
Yeah.
They are so good.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, like we pulled up a lot of our W League players to play on our Super League team, so like we have like people like Kaylee Utley who's tearing it up every week, doing her thing, and then we have a handful of other players. So it's really cool. And I don't mean to like hijack your point here, but it is very cool to see the W League. You get like a glimpse of that talent and then see them get pulled into the Super League if you have a Super League team, and then them continue on. And you're right, there's not that big of a gap in a lot of the talent that you experience there. And so you kind of get to use the W League as like the next stepping stone. Truly, it's a pathway up to the next one, and it works, and they're productive when they get out there. So it's sweet.
Well, let's talk about a little SoCal. Brad, what about some stuff that you like from this year?
Yeah, I really thought Matt was going to steal mine when he started talking about the final, and I thought he was going to say what I was going to say, which was that it was aired on CBS. The fact that the league is broadcasting on a national stage and CBS is a big name, that wasn't the only game this year that was broadcasted on, national TV. There were multiple games on CBS Sports, and then the inaugural CBS broadcast, which was Louisville versus Indy, which was an absolute banger of a game. It was like 5-3. Wilson Harris had a hat trick. The national stage got to see Elijah Widener, a player who, as we all know, got sold middle of the year on a 7-figure deal to Spain. But seeing these players and seeing these teams and seeing this league on a national stage, when this is something we've been pushing for forever, seeing it not just on ESPN Plus with local broadcasters and the occasional Mike Watts and Devin Kerr stream coming in, it's absolutely incredible seeing the growth from where we used to be pre-COVID to where we are now. I really hope the league continues to do the same and really starts to focus on local television deals. I know Orange County had 5 games on the local CBS affiliate during the year for only away games. I'd love to see that as either home games or, a lot more away games. And I hope I don't know the answer for a lot of the other teams around the league, but hopefully getting more local TV contracts, getting on television a lot more will help this league with its exposure and also help, really get a stable income so we see less teams folding and more teams are able to invest in the product on the pitch. Because you can see, when a lot of teams started investing, with new money, Vegas made it to the semifinals because they had their new ownership. Rhode Island made it to the final in year 1. If I'm the league, I'm plastering that to potential investors because at the end of the day, we get to see a lot of these, teams starting to succeed, seeing all this fresh capital come in, and I'd like to see more of that and stay on national television.
You know, it was funny because we talk about the national television thing. Obviously, people saw the ratings come out where it looks like the USL Championship final had more viewers than the MLS final, and it gets a little funky when you look at Apple streaming because whoever does the streaming, they can never actually calculate streaming well, and it's all whatever. I think equally a big deal is getting on Telemundo, where you're bringing in a Spanish audience. I think that's huge. I do think one of the biggest misses was not getting the League One final on CBS proper. I think putting it on Golazo was not a good decision. At least put it on the sports network or on CBS proper. But, you know, a lot of Chicago people, or Chicago, where am I? Colorado Springs people were upset about it being at 10 a.m. local. James Chambers said didn't feel like a proper final. But look at the league. The league is saying we, according to official network numbers, outdrew MLS. That's a win for the league. And yes, you can, cut some stuff up and it's all whatever. But that is a huge deal. The only one of those matches that really got screwed up was the Oakland-Sacramento game, where did not go on CBS because Biden dropped out of the race. And so they spent the next 4 hours discussing that while USL was supposed to be on CBS. Other than that, I feel like it went off without a hitch. And I think you saw an increase in quality. Something else that you really saw with CBS. Yogi, dude.
Yeah.
Your time, they put you front and center. I thought CBS did a great job doing the fan side of things. They did a great job with the fan experience on CBS.
Yeah. I would say CBS is a lot better at storytelling, like within the match itself. So, like, I went back and rewatched the Indy Derby for a multitude of reasons. But the storytelling within itself was a lot better than ESPN Plus. And I think it's just because you have someone else in the booth that you can talk with. Where ESPN Plus, a lot of these are guys doing it themselves. They're learning stuff very quickly. So it's like they got 3 or 4 talking points. So yeah, I would really love it if USL was just like, you know what, we're gonna go all in with CBS and just be hosted there and maybe, build a little bit more there. That's my hope. But seeing CBS coverage, because I think the Henry Derby, I think there was a Union Omaha game, and I think there was one other game I might be in there. But all of them had good production and storytelling value too, where you felt like, okay, this is a proper big game. This isn't just a run-of-the-mill game. This is a proper, this is one of those highlight games where you sit on the edge of your seat, whether you're a fan of the club or not, and be like, oh yeah, that's dope.
I just to jump in on that, I was at the final, and it definitely felt like it was a soccer game. It may have been earlier, but like everyone was there showing up. The production group, the team, maybe Rhode Island FC was a little asleep at the beginning, but the fans were certainly there. Speaking about CBS though, in general, and the Apple deal, I was looking at those numbers, Kaylor, and one of the things I think that USL is doing right is they're focusing on the community growth, because when you look at the broad spectrum of the ability to watch soccer across the globe, like when you get to TV packages, you're starting to talk about competition with other leagues, whether they watch it live or not. And that's one of the best parts about the USL, is that they're in these markets that have never had professional teams at certain points. So they're just hungry to consume more and more. Like in Rhode Island's journey this year, for every one fan that I've met, there's 3 people that still in the smallest state don't know that we have a professional soccer club here in Rhode Island. It baffles me. Maybe that's a marketing problem. I don't know. That's not my job to figure out. But like when you look at the TV deal, but then you also compare it to the appetite and the way that these markets are growing at the rate that they are, it may not always reflect in the attendance, but it's definitely moving in the right direction. And, I don't want to discount what MLS has done, because whether they've sealed their own fate with this Apple deal or not, that's a 10-year quiz that we're going to have to wait and see how it kind of like shakes out. But like one of the things that goes back to, speaking about like CBS and like Sports Golazo, like I couldn't watch the Golazo games if I didn't catch it in the moment, right? Like there was no replayability for those until you did, salacious things with USL that we won't comment on, or YouTube, excuse me, to find those games. And it's a problem. Like if you are going to expand into those markets, the game has to be available. So like that would be my only gripe about CBS. But overall, to Yogi's point, like they were phenomenal. The broadcast, the storytelling, the quality of production, like I'm really impressed with the level of effort that they sunk into it. And the only thing I have gripes with is the fact that in like the 70th minute of the final, they panned directly to me and said, "Look at those sad Rhode Island fans." That was probably the lowest moment. I had family and friends who were like, one, you look ridiculous, yes, and two, you look really sad right now. Is everything okay? Like, look at the scoreboard. Are you kidding me right now? Like, I shouldn't have to explain that.
Also, I think the reason why I think the CBS production is so great because I remember watching USL on YouTube.
Oh my
and
god,
those days were woo.
Hey, Brazilian betting comments nonstop in the YouTube comments were something else.
Yo, between Brazil and Russia comments, like it got wild. So
yeah, I don't know. I think that they did just a wonderful job. And speaking of marketing, I want to give a team some flowers. And I've said this a lot on this show, and I'm sure people who regularly listen are tired of hearing about it. You cannot go around one corner in Greenville, South Carolina without seeing a Liberty or a Triumph logo.
Yeah.
They are plastered everywhere. You can't go anywhere. I went to a farmer's market out there, and there were multiple like Greenville Triumph shirts for sale. A farmer's market.
Yeah.
They did put themselves everywhere. If people say I don't know what the Triumph is, I see it everywhere, but I don't know what it is, that's fair. But they've seen the logo. They know what it is. Like, there are teams that are doing a really good job. And this was even before Ronaldinho got involved, which that was a weird storyline that we just never brought up again about Ronaldinho and Greenville. I still don't understand that.
Can I ask a question about that? And I want everyone's honest opinion. One, do you think Ronaldinho got confused when he saw Greenville, South Carolina, and thought it was like a county of Atlanta? And two, do you think he could point out Greenville, South Carolina on the map right now?
No.
I was really like thinking, like, there's no way this man knows about Greenville, South Carolina. Like, there's no way. Someone probably told him, it was like, yeah, you get a best sentence. He was just signed on it. It was like, all right, cool, it's Atlanta.
Yogi, I don't think he could point to South Carolina on a map, let alone Greenville.
I feel like you'd ask him and he would just start doing like tricks to distract you.
Yeah.
Just move on.
Like, probably look over here. Like Ronaldinho could be like a Confederate historian and whatnot. Who knows?
Let me tell you about the Charleston Battery. You know how they got that name, right?
Yeah, right. Like, okay, Ronaldinho.
Though, but to your point, Kaylor, when we were in Charleston for the Eastern Conference Final, the next day, like one of the best parts of traveling is going around and like taking in the sights and the bites. We traveled to the touristy side of Charleston after staying on that like peninsula for the game, and I didn't see a single fan. I didn't see a single building. I didn't see a single sticker. I saw no Charleston Battery memorabilia, like ads, marketing of any kind. And that's one of the most oldest tenured active clubs in the history of North American soccer. So like if the Battery don't have that kind of level of arm of influence in their community, like what's being taken for granted there? I agree. I've seen what Greenville's doing. Like, how do we all take that homework and copy it for ourselves?
Well, I do think that some of it comes down to being at the mercy of local media, because I know Ben pretty well, Ben Clemens at Charleston Battery, and they work hard to get involved in places, but you can only go as far as your local media will take you. Being especially like Yogi, Tyler, like we're in the South, we know like what like local football does.
Oh man.
Like
basketball
your local high school football / basketball game is going to get more publicity than your professional soccer team will. Yeah. And that's the way it is. It's not their fault. You can only go as far as your local media will take you.
Yeah. And they will tell you straight up, like,
yeah,
we know here in Virginia, Spring is like high school baseball. So like the summer you'll get soccer a little bit, and then as soon as August hit, it goes straight to high school football. Like they'll drop off. Like you won't see them there.
For us, it's always UK. It's just like the other night at the Super League game. Like I was told that pretty much all of the media in the city traveled to go see the Gonzaga game and do coverage there. And we had our normal person, Anna Medina, like she's our one news anchor that's at every single game for the men's and women's teams. But like that's about it. Otherwise, we kind of get somebody here and there, maybe at best. But if there's a UK event happening, any type of sporting event for UK, you can forget about it. They're there.
Yeah.
What about some things that you like, Tyler, from this year?
I really like the rollout of the Super League. I really feel like the league did a good job of like pushing it, getting it all out there, publicizing it. You know, we talked about the show on Sirius XM, you know, them talking about that weekly, what's going on. I really think that they did an awesome job of just plastering it all over the place and saying, here's this new league. Let's, you know, support it. Here's all this content. And, you know, we're going to treat it like we do the other leagues that are already existing. And it's not just going to be a footnote. So I was really happy about that. And, you know, of course, we have like people like Amanda Vandervoort going around to all the different cities and then adding that extra layer to it. And I personally really like that they're using Peacock for all the games. I think that's really smart because ESPN Plus, people are only going to go there if they're going to go watch sports, right? And even then, all the USL stuff is kind of buried. But then people are going to be watching other things on Peacock and they might be scrolling around and then they come across the Super League, right? And so being on a platform that has more than just sports, I think really increases your potential for catching fans that maybe didn't realize that this was a thing. And maybe they're like, well, what is this? What's going on? I can't find anything else, you know, that's on. And it says there's a live soccer game. So let's see what's up with it. So I thought that was a good move personally. You know, I know there's a lot of, you know, mixed feelings about, well, now there's another service that I got to get to be able to watch my soccer and do this. And that's going to be a problem we're always going to have no matter what, right? I mean, they're never going to ever seem to coalesce into the one spot that we want them in. But I do enjoy that. And then, you know, it just, and this isn't necessarily like a league rollout thing, but I do think it was also smart that a lot of teams started, you know, courting NWSL teams to get players on loan and stuff and bring them in because then you kind of have a little bit of cross-pollination going on, right? Because, of course, fans of those NWSL teams, even if it's a player that hardly ever saw the field, they're still going to be like, oh, what was up with Amanda Allen? She played for Orlando, but now she's in Lexington doing some stuff. Maybe I'll like check that out and see what's going on. So I think, you know, there was a lot of really good things this year so far with what's happening with the Super League. And the nice thing about it is with this winter break, I feel like there's enough time for them to build back some more momentum and maybe implement some new things going into the spring. So before the season's officially over, you kind of have a little bit of breathing room to say what was not really working in the first half. And do we have time to maybe kind of tweak that going into the second half? So, you know, as somebody that really wants to see, you know, all sides of soccer succeed in my city for everybody, and it be accessible to everybody and supported by everybody. It's really nice to see the Super League kind of get its flowers and be propped up to the level that it has been.
Yeah, I wanted to quickly weigh in on that. You know, obviously the Super League's right now 8 teams. I know very early on infancy in the league. What do you want to see in the future with the league? I don't cover it as closely as you and Yogi do. However, you know, I do want to see the league be successful. I think there's plenty of room at the top of the pyramid for the USL Super League to succeed alongside the NWSL. So where does that growth occur next? And, you know, what does it take to get the league up there?
I really want to see the growth for the Super League take a little bit better route than like League One, right? You know, and I know Yogi can attest to this, that you have these patches of the US where you got teams, and then there's like these big gaps, these big huge gaps where it's just like, man, what the heck? There's like missing holes in soccer, and it makes, you know, a lot of league games more difficult in a lot of ways. Travel's kind of trickier. So I feel like a smart strategy with the way they fill out the league is something I'm looking forward to. And I know there's a lot of unique cities that are popping up or that are on deck to eventually come about that are in cities that don't necessarily already have a League One team, which is good. And I think, you know, it's going to be a little bit of a slow burn. You know, I've seen a lot of people comparing the early days of NWSL to what we're experiencing with the Super League, because a lot of people are like, oh yeah, the Super League, they're already not doing good. And like they're miles away from NWSL. For sure, NWSL has had a huge head start. But I think that if we can keep that support and that fire burning, not just from the league side, but from a fan side, then eventually we'll get there. We'll see us kind of catch up, and then we'll have those higher end talents that are coming in that people will be more willing to watch that are maybe not necessarily diehard Super League fans. So I'd like to see both of those things. The league fill out in a really smart way that keeps it kind of free from all of that. Oh, there's this giant portion of the country where there's no team to represent them, and also continue to kind of push for like, how do we get more recognizable talent here? How do we kind of fill this out and then keep increasing the quality more and more each time?
Real quick to that, because I know we got to go into the next point. Maybe not now, but in a few years, the formation of a league cup competition, definitely a women's open cup. So you'll love to see maybe a league's cup as well. I know the schedule is a little bit weird, but maybe something around that way, because I know they kind of overlap in the spring part. So that'll be cool to see as well. And maybe like don't know, maybe like a mid-tier system something between the Super and the W League for those teams like Minnesota Aurora that maybe aren't ready to go full professional, but they are that next tier up.
Yeah, that would be good.
I think the one thing that I did like from the year was the Jägermeister Cup, by the way. I just want to throw it out there. The tiebreaker being just goals scored led to people not just trying to fight it to penalties. That you did not see many 0-0s. It just did not happen very often. People were just trying to score goals. And I think if they keep that the same way, don't get me wrong, it made it a nightmare to keep up with tiebreakers. But, I think just in general, if they kept that, I think it'd be great, because you're going to see these League One teams going into championship houses and take it to them. They're not just going to kind of sit back and defend and try to hit on the counterattack. Like, they're just going to take it to them, because who cares if we lose by 7? We scored 10, right?
Yeah.
Like, who cares? Like, we're going to try to do our best just to get goals. And I think that it led to a pretty fun product to watch. That was just a lot of fun in general. Our next segment of the show is going to be things that you want to see changed in the next 1 to 3 years. And this is something that we kind of mention it this way, because as this is going to be the most common question, I'm just going to throw it out there. Yes, pro rel great, pro rel bad. I did both sides of it. You're welcome. That's probably not a 1 to 3 year conversation. That is probably looking much further out and not just 1 to 3 years. So yes, we can have a pro rel conversation, but we can have it on Twitter and Ted can chime in himself. So we can do that at a later time. I'm going to go ahead and just jump in so people can kind of get some ideas out there and just kind of think about it. Well, the first thing that I would love to see is, now with the deal with CBS, there's a little bit more broadcasting money. I want to see a massive improvement on broadcasting quality. Get new cameras in there, get new camera angles, get new things. I know people said goal line cameras. That would be great if they're allowed to use VAR, quote unquote, but they can't. But, I think that is something that needs to be fixed. Like, there's a lot of good commentators, but there's a lot of just dead zones in a lot of places. You watch a lot of games and it's like, I can't see anything. One of the worst ones, and it's not this way anymore, the old Greenville, the one I think it's at Legacy, like old Greenville Stadium.
Oh, yeah.
There was a part of the touchline you couldn't see because the thing just, you couldn't see it. There's a lot of those. And I think increasing the product of broadcast would be a huge deal, and that's something you could do next year. Or if you want to take another year to kind of reconcile and put a massive push and give every team a better broadcasting just kind of setup and a better broadcasting push, I think that would be a huge deal for the league. The second thing, the stats page on the league website, it needs to be updated more. B, needs just a lot of more, because I know they have XG. I know they have other things. I know they have passing like triangles. I know they have passing lines, because that's what broadcasters use during the game. Make it public. I know they have it. I've seen it. Just make it public. Let the nerdy people get in the weeds and make the content that other people want to see. Just make it available, make it easier so we don't have to go to 17 different websites to piece together a story for people. Those are my two. Yogi, let's go to you.
For me, you probably heard me if you follow me. I've talked about this before. The league being better at using what's available to them. Like we've all talked about it before, we all know about it because we cover teams. The lack of local presence and how a lot of these teams suck at marketing themselves. I would really love to see the league. I know Devin Kerr and them have the show, but it's mostly USL Championship focus. They have a Super League. They talk about the Super League. It wouldn't be hard for them to develop a show that talks about League One, right? Or a show that covers the W League or the USL Academy, right? Something in depth like that will help also like get more people interested. Because like for me, for instance, like I'm a League One fan and I have to wait till like minute 40 of Devin and Kerr them to be like, oh yeah, the League One are playing this weekend. This is what happened. You know, you want the in-depth coverage as well. And even if the league doesn't want to do it, outsourcing it to the people that cover this league in great depth. You know, USL show, you know, us at River City 93, King, you know, Crane Kicks. Like, I think the league sometimes does itself a disservice because I think they don't think other people will engage with it. So they're like, oh, we're not going to put in the work to do it. And they don't realize how shortcoming that is because there are a lot of great people out here that's covering this league for a while. The other thing I would really love to see improve is just God, I don't know, whatever. There are a few minority coaches in the league, but I think highlighting them just outside of Black History Month is very important. Like the Rhode Island coach right now is escaping my mind, but like, you know, he's a brilliant head coach. Phoenix Rising probably has one of the better North American coaches coming to them. And that's not a joke. Like he is one of the better coaches in American soccer. And, you know, we haven't really heard a lot from him. So I think like covering them just outside of Black History Month would be cool. And I think the third thing is I think USL, I think to make a lot of these clubs a lot more stable is to have a lot of these clubs like, yo, we need to have a plan in place of developing an academy. Like it can't just be you just spend a whole bunch of money because that's eventually how you're going to go broke in 4 or 5 years, going boom or bust. I think like, you know, development of an academy, and having those players that you can pull from, I think makes you a lot more stable in this community. And also like it's raising the next generation of fans for your community. Yeah, not every kid in your academy is going to play for your first team or whatnot, but they end up eventually becoming a fan of your club. I think that would be something great to see.
Can I push back on the academy piece or just ask a follow-up question? Because we talked to Cano Smith about, you know, will Rhode Island ever start an academy? And they kind of referenced when you look at MLS and the success that they've seen, that took 10 to 20 years to put the right mechanics, to put the right contacts, to build the right infrastructure around it, to develop the talent. I know that, you know, depending on how you ask about the USL too, they've been around for a long time, or it's in this era, not around that long. Is that really the responsibility of USL 1 and USL Championship, or can they be the place that the academies, whether it's regional youth academies, MLS Next Pro, where those players can't take the next step up, and suddenly USL 1 and Championship become the best place to compete for a contract or maybe a loan and move on that way? Like, is an academy system really the best thing for all of the clubs around USL 1 and Championship? Because I haven't been around long enough to know, so I'd love an education here.
To my understanding, okay, so for me, I believe it is, right? And I'm talking this as a fan that seen his club self-relegate because we tried to spend too much money up in the sea, right? And that made us drop down to League One, right? And then through that, we developed and started having an academy. So now, like this year, for instance, we can't spend, like Tyler can say, like we couldn't spend with, we couldn't spend with like the likes of Lexington, Omaha, Madison, and whatnot. So to counteract that, we develop an academy to kind of supersede that, so we can save our money to use on more top end talent. I think there is a space. Like, it depends on your club, really. Like, for instance, like, you're a very, like, Rhode Island's a very new club, so yeah, it's gonna be hard for y'all on the outright just to automatically have an academy. Where, like, a club such as Birmingham, right, in the next 5, I don't know if Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if you guys have an academy, but say they don't. Like, in the next 5 years or so, they should start having an academy because you've been around now for X amount of years. Lexington, for instance, like, in the next 5 or so years, they should start, putting an academy. So that way you have those footholds and those strangleholds in your community. Like, yeah, Lou City is a perfect example of this, where they started off as a club that were spending mega money, and now they're able to push through academy kids and spend even more money to top of their roster, but they're now able to take these academy kids and flip them and use that money to build out more and more infrastructure piece. Because you pretty much think about it, like, you're not paying anything for an academy kid, but the money you get back from you can use on so many other things like infrastructure stuff. By that.
Yeah, I wanted to step in here. This was the point that I wanted to raise when Kaylor asked his original question here, and I'm glad that we're talking about it now. 1 to 3 years is probably not for most clubs a reasonable time for an academy system. However, you can see the leagues moving towards that right now. I'll use Orange County as an example because we have had players like Kobe Henry, Aaron Cervantes, who have gone, abroad, and for some of those, I think Kobe Henry was a 7-figure deal. He came up through academy. Bryce Jameson's coming from our academy system. The league has the academy league already that we don't get enough information. We don't get enough content. They don't spotlight these players enough. It's kind of like a travel camp 1 week out of the year. They go to Tampa to the headquarters and they play a small little tournament. I hope with the league this past season, hiring Oliver Weiss as a front office manager for the league to kind of help teams coordinate this youth talent that he did when he was in Orange County and was really part of that academy system we had. Just seeing stuff like that kind of taken to fruition. Sure, it might not be a reasonable 1 to 3 year for most teams in the league, but we need to be fighting against the pay-to-play system that the youth leagues are already. I think a lot of us are really disappointed with, the pay-to-play system, seeing kids kind of and families get it taken advantage of when a lot of other countries and a lot of other clubs give that as kind of a free system because the teams make profit off these players at the end. As mentioned in the comments by Andy, 1 or 2 players will pay an entire season's bills for transferring those quality talents. For every Widener brother, there's a undiscovered talent who might not get minutes because they're not getting recognized in their local communities.
Matt, to answer one part of your question, you said that trying to find the spot of the MLS Next Pro player who couldn't get into the first team, kind of log jammed. I think a good example of that would be your own Jackson Lee, who foregoed his round 1. The difference between that and an academy player is that an academy player, it doesn't really fall under the CBA. That there is no minimum wage. There is like an appearance fee, but they can still go to college after that.
Yeah.
So it's insulating them.
Yes. Yeah. So like Snedden, maybe Yogi, is that?
Oh yeah. So like for the instance here in Richmond, for instance, like we have a couple of guys that are pros now, but they started off on academy deal. So for instance, like Nick Simmons, he played I think 6 games for us this year. Could have gone pro, but decided to go to college. So like decided to go to UVA. So you can sign guys to academy deals, and they still have the option of going to pro or sticking around. They get the experience and everything like that. But then on the flip side of it, like say if you got someone that's doing really, really well, and maybe college is above that stuff. Like maybe you'd be like, all right, you're better than this. You can come, he could be signed as a pro. And then the worst come to worst is you have a club legend for the next 10 years. And the best thing is in 2 to 3 years, you sell them for profit, to MLS or overseas.
Yeah, I mean, you look at guys like that. I mean, I talk about my own club. Finn Callaway for Birmingham got a lot of minutes. I say a lot. He got a couple 100 minutes, which is a lot for a 17-year-old, I suppose. I say that we had several like 17-year-olds get a lot of minutes, but some of them were professionals, like Rami Zamuda, who's 15 years old, got 700 something minutes. You had Matthew Corcoran, again, a professional, get over 1,000 minutes, 2,000 minutes last year, but they were under CBA, thus had a minimum wage. Meanwhile, Ben Callaway just committed to Kentucky, and so he's going to be going off there, but he got like an appearance fee, and that's it. He still kept his NCAA eligibility and kept the wage bill about $33,000 less. So that's a lot of the reasons. While the initial academy setup is pretty expensive, if you're committed to using it and making a true pipeline to getting 1 to 2 players in a year, it pays off in the long run. I'm going to quickly jump over to Tyler, and if we have enough time, Matt, I will come back to you. Tyler.
Mine's pretty quick because a lot of my things are kind of what's already been talked about. I really, kind of riding off what Yogi said about, leaning on local media. It would be really nice to see like a lot of what we do be propped up a little bit more. And I know that there's a lot to work around with that, especially with us not being officially employed by anybody in the league. And, there are things that have to be dealt with for them to be able to feel comfortable to be like, all right, so we're going to go to you for this, and I totally understand that, but I feel like they could find ways to make that work and make that happen because we're all doing it for free, or most of us are doing it for free, and it's because we love the club. And at the end of the day, that love is going to keep us from doing anything detrimental to the club. All we want is for it to succeed, and everything we do is for that purpose. There's no strings attached. It's not, local news being like, I don't know, I'd rather cover a high school, basketball game today because we're in UK country. We are always going to be there. We're always going to provide that coverage. I'm literally the only person who posts our post-match interviews for our team. Like every single time they have a home game, nobody else does that. I mean, we have a couple people that every once in a while will get some stuff out there, but it'd be nice to see that, them leaning in a little bit more, but then also finding a way to help clubs or encourage clubs to really find that in with local news. Because as cool as it is to be a part of these streaming services, the average everyday fan, like for instance, UK basketball fan, they're watching local news to get highlights, information about that. So if they could kind of push that a little bit more to be like, look, you need to give like this package like a 30-second spot, please. Just put it in your broadcast and say, here are the quick highlights from the game the other night, especially when we're talking about things like our UPSL team, our U20s. Right? Those are local kids. And so if you highlight them, it's no different than highlighting your local high school sports and being like, these are local kids in our community going off and competing places. Check them out. See what they're doing. This might be the future star of UK soccer, or it might be the future star of Lexington Sporting Club or U of L soccer. We have so many colleges in the area that have soccer programs that even if they don't go pro with Lexington, they're going to be seen somewhere most likely. And people that are here are going to watch that. They're going to listen, and then they're going to associate that tie to our pro team. So that's kind of like my big one for us.
Matt, we have a little bit of time.
I'll
come back to you.
I'll do it quick. One is I'd like to see a more stringent vetting of teams entering in any of the leagues at this point. I think it's great when we get excited about Springfield, Missouri, and everything that goes on to that. Boise, Idaho. I was like, yes, we may be the first team in Idaho. We may be the first league, but like it needs to come. Living this for the first year, it is incredibly difficult to start an expansion team and a stadium at the same time. It would be irresponsible not to highlight how difficult that is, but those things have to fall in a certain order. And so like, again, we're new, but like seeing Memphis 901, a team that I really enjoyed watching this year, go through these problems and then suddenly be out of the picture because they had X amount of years to get this together and it didn't quite fall in their lap the way they had hoped. I'd like to see a different order to this because again, it provides stability, but it provides the level of professionalism that outsiders, like when players need to worry, like, will this club be in operation the next year? That's not something that they want to live by, regardless of what the CBA does to protect them from those kinds of situations. So like, I'd love to see, you can talk about the markets as much as you want, but I would love to see it like no stadium, no conversation until that is at least marshaling towards its final perspective. But the other one that I really am passionate about is I would like to see maybe a playoff structure change. I really like how the playoffs are done. I don't think there's anything wrong with them. So if you don't touch them, nothing, no harm, no foul. But knowing in this first year how incredibly important it could have been to our state building the fan base here, if we had had one playoff game in like, you know, you go back to like an away and home in like the first round, that is again how you continue to build these markets at the community level. Like, people are attracted, the casual fans are attracted to that winning perspective or that chance to go for glory. And I just think like one little like taste of it at the end of the season could mean a lot to the fans that are trying to explain the match, especially American fans that aren't in soccer, that don't understand the importance of things outside of playoff structure. Like, they just kind of wait until that matters. Like, that could be a make or break for a lot of these clubs when it comes to pushing that fan to the next level and getting a mini ticket package or become a season ticket member, you know, just getting the hooks back in them. So I would like to see every team in the first round get one playoff game and then go back to single elimination afterwards. But again, if we didn't change that, I wouldn't be upset with it either way.
I have a proposal for the playoffs that I had earlier this year. I think that the importance of having a home playoff game in the first round is huge, which is why seeding matters. I think that if you barely snuck in, you deserve what you got to go away. But I think that the conference finals or the national semifinals on League One side should be home and away. So that way you could market to your fans, this is a final. You could tell your fans, this is a final at home. Reward both teams for making it to the finals. And so, like, if you're a Rhode Island who, you know, stormed their way through all away games, they get a home game. And then that way, and then you can have a home game. The final is one game, home game for whatever. That's my personal thing. The conference finals / national semifinals should be home and away. That way you reward teams for being good all year long, but also reward all the teams for making it to the national semifinals. That's just me, though.
Yeah, and I know that with a lot of us USL vets, we'll see something get changed to the way we like it one year, and the next year it'll change again, because that's just unfortunately how it's been a lot recently with a lot of changes.
Yep. Well, listen, we put in a good show today. It was a long show. Lots of conversations. There's definitely stuff that we missed out on, and who knows, maybe we'll do it again some other time. But let's kind of go around the horn and let's tell people where they can find you on all of the things. Like, let us know like what you're a part of once again, and where they can find you on social media / podcast player / YouTube / whatever. Yogi, where can we find you, dude?
You can find me on Blue Sky. You can find me on X-Men. I don't be on there no more. At that guy Yogi, you can follow River City 93, at River City 93 on Blue Sky. You can also follow Walking 90 on Blue Sky as well.
Bad.
Yeah, I mean, at Pal in the Sky pretty much everywhere. I want to give this time, Orange and Black Soccer Cast. We put in a lot of effort to cover the Orange County Soccer Club. We do a lot of written content, and I think, it's hard to have a good podcast without a written content. Be the media when local media might not be the media.
Matt?
Yeah, you guys can find us on all of the normals, X, Threads, Blue Sky, you name it, at RIFC Podcast. We have an Instagram that's at Raising Anchor. I don't know why we split those, but we just did. We've got a website, raisinganchorpodcast.com, and we drop an episode every week on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. We just dropped Coach Cano Smith, an interview and a recap from him from last week, and we'll have a couple more interviews throughout the rest of the season. So that's us.
Tyler?
At Crane Kick Selects on everything, all the socials. We also have a WordPress that you can get to through our social accounts, where we do a lot of match previews, little write-ups here and there. Of course, we have a podcast on YouTube, streamed on all the different podcast players. We do a lot of interviews with coaches, players, members of the staff, all that. So we actually had a back-to-back interview most recently with Shay Moyer and Maddie Parsons, both out of our Super League team. So Love it when people check those out, especially because those players, staff members, they take time out of their busy schedules to come be with us to help people get to know them. But follow me on any of that stuff, and we're there.
Again, thank you to all the people that listened. It was an absolute blast to do this. It was an absolute blast to talk to all of you guys once again. If people aren't following y'all, they really should be. Some of the best minds in the USL are definitely here, including some others who weren't able to make it on tonight. But thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate you all so very much. There might be a show next week that will be pre-recorded. We won't go live on Christmas Eve. We're not like that. But there might be a pre-recorded show for Christmas Eve that will be left under your tree. Thank you so much for listening. And for the first and final time tonight, here's Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist Podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see everyone again next time.